Hey, you're about to watch a sick interview coming up with a guest that I've brought on, and I'm just going to kind of let them do their thing. So I hope you can enjoy this. Just grab a notebook. Make sure you grab a notebook and a pen so that you can take notes. I'm not the one sharing stuff here. This is them. So let them do their business with you and coach you into something relating to marketing and teach you something new. You can learn from people from all different industries. So also hit the subscribe button and then hit a bell. The bell should pop up after you hit subscribe. That would just help me bring the subscriber number up. I love that. And then it'll also notify you whenever new videos go live or new interviews like this go live. So make sure you do that. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. All right, guys, we got Randy here on the podcast. How's it going, Randy?
Doing pretty well. How about you?
Good. So tell us a little bit about what you do. Just give us the rundown.
Yeah, so my name's Randy. I'm the founder of Stimulate. We're a retention marketing agency for direct-to-consumer brands. We do everything from writing the copy, designing emails, we write copy for emails and texts, manage subscription programs, do some Octane AI quizzes. And yeah, I've been doing this for 2 years, but I started the agency like a year and a half ago.
Okay, cool. And was that your first time doing anything marketing related? Was 2 years ago?
Yeah. So I studied marketing in college, but then I went into finance. But during the beginning of the pandemic, I kind of did a career shift and decided to kind of go into digital marketing. I was doing a little bit of everything. So like website creation, email was one of the things I offered, but as I kind of dabbled in a few, and like I was doing Google ads, as I became more familiar with email, I was like, oh, I like this a lot. It was really cool to, I guess you would send out an email and then drive a bunch of revenue, and that was a lot of fun. So I kind of dove deeper into that field.
That's cool. And how'd you dabble in that? I dabble in
email.
You gotta have a list. You gotta have a list to be able to send to be able to see the revenue. So how'd you do that?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll tell you how I got started. After I graduated college in 2019, I was working in finance. I did not like it, so I quit after 2 months. It was not, I didn't stay very long. And I was gonna start a food truck. I wanted to do something entrepreneurial. So I got a job on a food truck to kind of learn how it all worked. And I did that for a few months, and I realized I was not going to like the food truck life. But the food truck I was working with, I saw a lot of opportunity for them to grow. They had like a lot of recipes for success. They knew how to make really good food. They already had a lot of connections and like an established business, but I saw like a lot of opportunity for them to grow. So I think like January of 2020, I pitched that I help like partner with them and try to grow their business. And I was going to get a percentage of like however much I grew it by. And then the pandemic came and that totally ruined their business, just because they'd sold to people who would come into work during their 9-to-5 jobs. And then they also did catering events, which obviously were non-existent during the pandemic. So I tried to help them like shift and like adapt to this like new way of life of, people living and eating from home. And one thing I noticed was they had like a whole list of email addresses that they had never contacted just from like customers who had purchased from them before. So we set up like a delivery service, and we used MailChimp to send emails to their existing customers. And I was helping them with a bunch of other stuff, but that was really cool because I remember we just launched their delivery service and we sent out an email about it and a bunch of people started ordering. And I was like, oh, wow, that's awesome. Like we created an email, we sent it out, people started purchasing, and that's kind of like how I got into email. And then from there, I started to like do some freelance work and try to connect with other small businesses doing their email as well.
That's cool. That's awesome. So let's get into it, like how you think email should be run. What are some things that that you might do for your clients that you think other people should be doing more of? Like there's the basic like flows, for example, there's campaigns routinely, but like maybe talk about frequency, maybe talk about content, what they should be monitoring more when it comes to what their audience wants. What are some things that people need to be keeping an eye out for?
Yeah, for sure. So I think a lot of people, they use email, they send out emails, they hope to get a good click rate and a lot of revenue. But I look at it more from like a retention standpoint. So I really like closely monitor two metrics: repeat purchase rate and then lifetime value by cohorts. And basically what we do a lot of is like we'll test different offers and like have unique discount codes for each offer, test different messaging, and like understand how that impacts lifetime value 2, 3, 4 months down the road. Because to me, like that is what email and SMS do best, like just drive retention and lifetime value. And it's really important to understand your metrics and like what's moving the needle and how you can increase lifetime value, or maximize lifetime value. And you're going to be able to do that just by like getting into the details, looking at specific campaigns, codes that you've used, et cetera, and understanding how like what moves the needle. So I think that's one important thing. Two, like I know a lot of like bigger e-commerce brands definitely focus on good design. And I think that, some people think that design is not very important. If you have like good copy, you can get the sale. And then others, I think like that's how I used to be. But as we grew, we started to like elevate our design. And I've noticed that like when you follow design best practices, it definitely amplifies your messaging. And good design definitely leads to like better engagement, and that results in hopefully better revenue as well. So I think that's something that, a lot of brands do want their emails to look good, but it actually is like worth the investment. It's not just like something to make your brand seem pretty. I think it actually does drive more engagement.
Yeah, I've heard that. I interviewed someone else. I think his name was Donavir.
Mhm.
And he was like, design is just supposed to help whatever you're writing about in your email. It's supposed to assist it, and it will be effective if you do that right. Can you go more into your first point? And I should be taking notes, but you said something about lifetime value and measuring it by cohorts. Can you go more into detail about how you measure those types of things? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So you can actually do it in Klaviyo on like a very basic level. What it looks like is like a chart where you'll see, okay, we acquired, 100 new customers in January, 200 new customers in February, and you can see the number of orders they've placed or like the revenue per new customer month by month. So you can see like in January, the average customer's AOV was $100. In February, the average customer spent another $10. And you're just trying to maximize those values. Common Thread Collective definitely, I definitely like learned from them, that this is something really important to track. What they say is that like over the course of a year, you want to double AOV. So if AOV on a first purchase is $80, you want lifetime value to be $160 over the course of a year. And so typically when I'm entering a new account, like they're not doubling lifetime value or AOV over the course of a year. So if you have like something more advanced, like Triple Whale can do this. I think there's even better platforms like Lifetimely for looking at lifetime value. You can break down, you can say, okay, let's look at subscription customers versus non-subscription customers. We're looking at the same kind of data, and we'll say like, okay, in January, there's 100 new subscription customers, and there's also 100 new customers who didn't purchase a subscription. And you can see that like a subscription customer, their lifetime value is 4 times higher than, non-subscription customer. So then now I know that data. one question becomes, how do I get more of these customers to become subscription customers? That's obviously a very like intuitive example. I think every subscription brand wants like to maximize their subscribers, but for good reason. They have a higher lifetime value. So then you can like start planning out your messaging, maybe your flows, your campaigns might be centered around, if you have an offer, it might be centered around subscriptions rather than, one-time orders. Um, but you're only going to understand what moves the needle if you do those, like, if you drill down into those cohorts and understand like how you can unlock a higher, repurchase rate or lifetime value. But there's a lot that, you can segment by. If you're collecting zero first party data, you can segment by that. You can segment by like anything that these platforms are going to allow you to segment by. And like, I think the one big thing is you want to make sure, let's just say, if I'm working with a beauty brand, and if someone has a skin concern of acne, then like their lifetime value is, 3x the average. That's great. But if you only have that data on like 1% of your customers, you're not going to be able to move the needle a lot. So like I'm looking for cohorts that like represent about 20% of the business or more. And if like 20% of our customers are subscription customers, like I have a good sample size and I know that like this is a viable cohort that we can continue to grow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. So, a different topic is Apple Mail, Apple Privacy Opens. I'm sure you're segmenting by that, right? You're taking that into account. Can you go into how you might be doing that? Because that is kind of in the weeds, but it's something everyone needs to know by now. And I think there's a lot of question as to how the industry standard should approach it. So how do you do it?
Yeah, for sure. So personally, I feel like Apple Mail has not really had a big impact on our clients. I think part of that is because the way I'm segmenting is like rarely based off of opens, which is like the thing that is the metric that's affected by Apple's privacy updates. Rather, I'm like focusing based off of actions and intent that go beyond just the open. So if I'm promoting a specific product, I might promote that product to anyone who's like viewed it or added it to cart over the last, 120 days. I might promote it to a win back segment or a cross sell segment, like any customers purchased over the last 12 months, but they haven't repurchased in the last 60 days. I'm kind of like making up some segments here that we use, but none of those really relate to opens. So Apple's updates don't really affect like how we're segmenting or who we're sending to. I would say that there are like some things that you have to be aware of. Like I think one thing is Apple's updates obviously inflate your open rates. So you might think you have good open rates. You might say like, oh, I have a 30% open rate. That's great. But you have to definitely pay a little bit closer attention to deliverability, like using deliverability apps to make sure that it's not like your open rate is actually 30% and isn't something a lot lower. And so we use like Glock apps, which allows us to kind of understand like how emails are placing in the inbox. So it'll say like for Gmail, like 80% of your users are receiving their emails in the promotions tab and 10% in their primary tab and then 10% in the spam tab. And that's something that we're checking monthly. And it just allows us to better control and prevent any deliverability issues. So I think that's something that maybe has shifted. Like you definitely have to pay a little bit more attention to that because it's not going to be as apparent as like looking in your Klaviyo account and seeing, a low open rate and being like, oh, I have a spam issue. It might be hiding in there and you just don't realize it. But yeah, like other than that, I think pretty much everything I've been doing has remained consistent pre iOS updates. I guess like one thing is like if you're gonna use an open segment, like people have open, you can exclude people who like have only open with machine opens. And we do a bit of that, but yeah, I'd say it hasn't had like a major impact on our clients.
Yeah. Have you guys turned that on in your back end to exclude Apple privacy opens?
Yeah,
Um,
for you mean for attribution?
yeah.
Yeah, so I do that. Um, I think that I'm more of like a last click guy. So honestly, I use like Google Analytics to track most of our revenue. I rarely use Klaviyo. I think that the click is what's important. If someone saw your email and they didn't click it, I would say like I don't think that should, drive or that should count as like revenue that we drove. But I did turn that on like for all of our clients because I think it is good to filter those out to so your data is not skewed. Um, but yeah, I always recommend like Google Analytics, last click. I think that's like the biggest source of truth. And I'll tell you like one reason why I think that. We've run tests before where we'll like test two different segments, the same email, two different segments. And you'll see like this segment that we thought was really not going to drive a lot of revenue. Klaviyo is reporting it drove like $5,000 on this send. And then the good segment that we thought was going to outperform maybe drove $10,000. But then when you go into Google Analytics, the lower segment actually drove like no revenue. It was all like inflated by opens, but no one actually clicked and purchased. Whereas like the revenue that Klaviyo reported for like that high intent segment, the revenue translated pretty well into Google Analytics. And so sometimes like Klaviyo can be a bit misleading if you're basing your attribution off of opens.
Yeah. Yeah. We've experienced that too at the Ridge is you can't really look at that. You got to look on the other back end. So that's cool. That's cool. So I had another question. Yeah. So when it comes to email and SMS as an agency, what tools do you guys use to plan out campaigns and do recurring testing when it comes to maybe putting stuff in flows, um, planning out what tests you want to try for different brands? You've got different brands to manage. How do you manage all of that? What tools do you use and all that?
Yeah, for sure. So we use ClickUp, which is like our hub for everything we do. And inside ClickUp, we basically have like a calendar and we plan out, what automations and campaigns we're going to launch on both email and SMS for our clients. And then we have like a system in there that tracks A/B tests. So if we're running like an automation A/B test, there'll be like a parent task and then like the two variations underneath it. And we'll like put in some data. So we'll say, okay, we started this test on this date. This is kind of like when we expect the test to end because as of right now, like Klaviyo just rolled something out. I think it's in beta, where they'll auto determine like the winning automation for you. But where it stands for the majority of people today is like you have to go back into the account, test or like calculate the statistical significance, and then like choose the winner. So we like put in estimates of like when we think that the winner is going to be selected by just based off of like the traffic that's flowing in. And then like we have a like easy toggle that just says like, okay, variation is the winner or variation B is the winner. And then we like have detailed notes of like what we were testing and like what our learnings are. I think one thing that we need to do a better job on is basically just having like a summary page of all of our learnings. Because the whole reason why you should be A/B testing is to get new learnings that you could apply to all of your future messaging. And I have it all in my head. I'm like, okay, this did really well. This didn't do well. But as we've scaled, that doesn't really work. So it just needs to be like summarized on a page. I think that's key, just so it becomes transparent for anyone to see, like even our clients, because I don't think our clients would honestly know where to find our A/B tests results. Whereas like I know them all. They're in ClickUp. It's just like you have to dig for them.
Sure, sure. And then campaign planning. Is there anything that you do? If you were to onboard a new client, what are the main campaigns that you would send and make sure should be sent if someone was starting from scratch, or they were like trying their best and they were like, hey, we want you to take over. What would you say should be the foundational campaigns?
Yeah, good question. So if they're just starting off on a Klaviyo account, obviously like it's really important to get good engagement in the beginning. just to warm up your IP. And you can do that by, using detailed segments, and I would recommend you like have campaigns that are going to drive a lot of engagement. So month one, offers are undeniably something that are going to get a lot of clicks and sales. It doesn't have to just be something standard like 10% off, but there's a variety of different offers like buy one, get one, free gift, whatever it may be. But something like that could be good in their first month. We test a lot of angles. So I'll look at like best sellers. I think it's always important. Like if something's a bestseller, a lot of times clients will be like, oh, we got to sell more of this product. We don't sell enough of it. It's like, well, you're actually going to, do a lot better if you're just promoting your best sellers. It's a bestseller for a reason. Most of your customers want it. So we'll look at best sellers and we'll try different angles. And I saw like Biakta, he had a tweet. I don't know if you know him, but he had a tweet yesterday. And I think this is like perfect. Like test different things like social proof. There's a variety of ways you can test social proof. Let's try like before and after photos. Let's try, reviews from press. Let's try customer testimonials. And like you can test, like, I guess the angle would be social proof, and then like test a variety of different ways to push that social proof. And we do a lot of that we'll do that like continually just to understand like what's gonna work the best for the client. And if they have any historic data, like we always take a look at that. Like we'll ask them, what kind of messaging has performed the best for you guys? Like a lot of times things that are working for Facebook are going to work for email. So we'll try to capture as much as that information as possible, just because we find like it's the same messaging is going to work on Facebook, email, etc. Yeah. Relatively speaking. Obviously, right. The stage of the funnel changes a bit, but
right. Yeah. That's great. That's a great answer. So last question that I wanted to throw at you, and it's more like it's not as technical at all.
Okay.
Not technical at all. If you've had to deal with your clients, you see everywhere all over like the worst case scenario is when a client says, hey, that's not on brand. So how do you approach that? If someone were to say that, if something wasn't on brand, would you try to mend that and try to make it more on brand? Is there a point where you would try to talk about the benefits of why you made it the way it is? It's not a technical question at all. It's just more like, how would you deal with your clients in that form?
Yeah, that's a good question. We see a lot of this actually, like in the first month of working with a client. We're just like learning what they like and dislike. I think the important thing is like before we even start working with them, we try to capture as much information as possible. So we're asking them for like, okay, like send us, your own assets that you kind of like and that are on brand for you. Plus like send us email examples of like what you want your brand to look like, or if there's anything that represents your brand well, let us know. Same with copy as well. Like we'll ask for examples or like as much detail as possible. Not every brand has like a brand guide. So we find that, just providing us with examples will at least help us get on the right page. But then a client's going to come to us and they might say like, hey, this is not on brand. If it comes to like brand, I would say that we're gonna ask like specifically what don't you like, and honestly, like I don't do much of this. Like our copywriter and designer are in charge of that. But their job is definitely to get on the same page about like style of messaging and design, etc., and to make sure the client gets exactly what they want. And sometimes that requires like multiple rounds of revisions. I would say like in the first month, then we start to get like we know their brand. And I wouldn't necessarily fight back or like explain our case when it comes to brand. But if it came to something like strategy wise, then that's the time where I'd say, actually, like I disagree. This is why we did this. I'll push back. I'll change it if they're like really adamant in keeping it the way they want it. But I guess like know when to choose your battles. But when it comes to brand, I think the brand itself is going to know like the best way to represent themselves. Unless it seemed like crazy or out of the box. And I was like, I don't know if that's going to work, but yeah, generally we're just like asking for feedback and reiterating until we get it right.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I enjoyed chatting with you.
Where can people find you?
Yeah, I guess I don't even know my Twitter handle. So you can find me on www.stimulate.agency. That's our agency website. I think my Twitter handle is it's Randy MCQ.
I can put it on the screen or something like that. Yeah. Perfect, man. Perfect, man. Thanks for chatting.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Hey, if you like this video, you should like it, subscribe, ring the bell, and then go follow me on Twitter, because that's where I'm posting all the announcements about stuff like this. So, yeah, I'll talk to you later. Stay tuned for the next video.